New Mexico, spring 1991. This is a strange trip. Mom, Dad, and me. Mom and Dad had asked for the key. They wanted to come up for a week. I had wanted to take off, but Jimmy K was coming up for the weekend and Eddie and his new wife and child are due anytime. Once they show up, they could stay for several weeks, so I decided that I would just go without Merlene and Brandy. Brandy is still recovering from the back operation and she probably is not quite ready for the trip anyway. I had a wreck and totaled the old 82 Maxima. I was lucky and only sustained a cracked rib, but the car that we have pampered for all these years was totally destroyed in a few quick seconds. The insurance company could care less that it was in mint condition and that it ran as good as the day it was bought. Their only consideration is that it was 8 years old and that it was a diesel. We received $1,900 for our loss, and since we had been offered only $1,225 from the Infiniti dealer as a trade-in, I guess the payment wasn't so bad. Not enough to buy any kind of replacement car, so I just put the cash in on the six-wheeler that Brian has been trying to sell me. We brought up the new six-wheeler, 2 bench seats from the old blue van, the back seat from the Suburban, a defunct garden trailer that Dad started to throw away 5 years ago, and 1 dining room chair. Dad and I have enjoyed planning and rigging the car seats into off-road riding systems. We mounted one of the bench seats on the cargo box of the ATV. The Suburban seat we mounted on the little garden trailer, and it tows behind the six-wheeler. Can't wait for Brandy to try out our seats. She has been fairly restricted up here. Climbing these hills is almost impossible for her, and we can't carry the 125-pound sack of potatoes. Now she can ride up the trails and go anywhere anyone else can. I count each of these days with Dad as a blessing. We both enjoy planning and fiddling with things to make them work. He likes to measure and make things precise, while I tend to want to just get it done. We both put up with each other, and I would like to think that he also realizes that these are special times between a father and a son. In our case, the son is 50 years old, but better late than never. He had a little heart scare last week and the doctor sent him in for a stress test and all. They put him on a strict diet and he is walking every day for exercise. For this trip, I am eating the same food as he. Truth is, I probably need the diet and exercise just as bad as him, but I'm afraid of what the doctors will tell me if I let them give me all those tests. My health is one of my major concerns, but the business stress and demands seem to sap the willpower necessary to do the things I should for myself. High points of the day. The pairs of black-headed grosbeaks at our feeder, tightening the 3 chains of the ATV again and again. The wheel falling off the trailer on its maiden voyage. Convincing Mom to cook beans in the pressure cooker. Breakfast, lunch, and supper. She is gone. I have not written for several years. The computer files were almost lost with the failing hard disk and constant shuffle of old to newer computers. Life has gone on. New grandchildren, new business events, Y2K and the new millennium, and the loss of our most special, wonderful, and loved Brandy. It has been 3 months, and it is not easy to write about her, and I cannot express my feelings as I would like. When I stop and think back about Brandy, I get emotional, and tears fill my eyes as they are at this moment. She was such a blessing to our family, and we are so thankful for every day that she brightened our life with her presence. Brandy suffered the disease and pain in silence, and even near the end did not complain or cry out. Her end was not a tragedy. It was quiet and timely. She had suffered for too long and there was no hope for recovery. This last time lasted for 6 months as she waited for us to bid her a final farewell. Our family has always despaired at the pain and loss of opportunities that Brandy lived with. That courageous and loving person that was Brandy changed the lives of not only our family, but many, many other people. God placed Brandy among us as an angel unaware, to fulfill His will and mold our family and all who knew her into better people. She had a gift for stealing the heart of everyone who passed near her light, and her innocence and love softened their hearts from that moment on. I do not know why I cry for her. I am not sad, or mournful. I just miss her. Mission trip to Mexico. In the summer of 2001, I went with the church youth group on their mission trip to Galena, Mexico. It was their 2nd year to visit this same enclave in the Sierra Madres of central Mexico. My interest had been perked by the pictures displayed of this previous trip. This same area, near Interbede, had been the destination of several of our men's Mexico motorcycle trips, and I knew the scenery was great and weather cool. I had made several comments about the trip, and when the youth came up a vehicle short, John Logan, the youth director, gave me a call. My new excursion had lots of room and I felt the Lord wanted me to go since he kept drawing me to the trip. Since I had the new car, the girls all claimed the excursion and left the boys to the van. Listening to the girl talk about other girls, music, and school brought back memories of my girls in their teen years. The trip down was fun with no problems except for John having his credit card maxed out and the $10 charge at the border would not go through. The papers for the van were in his name and we had to fax back to Cedar Hill for more papers with another name. 2 hours wasted. I bent the ear of my front seat partner, the only other man in my car, with stories of my previous men's trips to Mexico. I knew my credibility was getting thin and vowed to tell no more stories, but the desert sands and tall cactus tempted me into spinning just one more about our long, dry day on some remote sand road in this same type terrain. The road was as straight as an arrow and narrow to a pinpoint as it disappeared into the horizon. The 20-foot tall cactus stuck up like a forest with no leaves. It was hot, and we were tired. Finally, we pulled over on the road and just sat on a sand berm, contemplating whether to turn around or explore into the bleak desert. We were the picture of a drink commercial, sitting in the desert sun, sweat running down our face, fantasizing about something to drink, when a small puff of dust appeared on the horizon. It grew larger and a small red speck at its front came closer and closer. Yes, it was a Coke truck, barreling down the road toward us, just like a commercial. We jumped up to move the bikes out of the road just in time for it to sweep past, engulfing us in a choking cloud of dust, and still thirsty. I told the story to illustrate what the desert we were driving through now was like beyond the payment, but in so doing knew that was probably one story too many. 5 days later, we were on our way to a rancho that had a small church, and were going to do our passion play, snow cones, and mission thing. The dust was so thick it was blowing out of the air conditioner vents and I had to slow to a crawl and separate us from the van. Up ahead on this desolate, straight, dusty road, another dust cloud approached, and yes, at its head was a red truck, and yes, it was a Coke truck just like my one too many story. I didn't have to say a word, I just turned and looked at my partner riding shotgun. He smiled and said, "Confirmation is great, isn't it?" It was a church trip, and a mission trip. We had started with a prayer in front of the church, and at the end of the day, and at meals, and at other junctures. Prayer duty was being passed around with even the youths participating freely. It was becoming clear that I, who never pray in public, would be faced with an embarrassing moment when asked to publicly speak with God. I lay in my cot that first night in the bunkhouse in Mexico thinking about the day's events and started putting together a few thoughts for that dreadful moment. I have a problem with obsessive-compulsive dreams, and the structure and content of my prayer became each night's thoughts before and even after sleep. Each day passed though, and the dreaded event failed to materialize. The last day, the last night, and we have a bonfire to finalize our trip under the clear night sky and stars. The missionary, Ray, closed the ceremony with a prayer and asked if someone else wanted to say something. One after another, slowly, each of the adults and youth began to voice their thanks for the previous days. I wasn't listening. A voice inside me just kept saying, "Les, you chicken, you have been thinking about what you wanted to say for a week now. If you don't speak up, you're not a man." Finally, after a particularly long pause, I started my prayer in a surprisingly clear, strong voice. We were standing in a circle, holding hands, some 30 youth and adults, staring at the glowing remains of the giant bonfire. Bob, the comedian, of our Sunday school class, was holding my hand on my right. It was a magic moment, the coals glowed, the night was still, no wind, everyone was quiet and contemplating, and the first few lines of my prayer flowed clear and easy from somewhere from within as I listened to myself. A shockingly loud explosion, a shower of red glowing firework sparks, shoot from the bonfire, and Bob, holding my right hand, jumps at least 2 feet off the ground. When he lands, it is in a convulsion of laughter, and then, a heaving, sobbing, convulsion as he tries to hold in the laughter so that I can finish my prayer. I prayed on, just as if nothing had happened, and finished with an amen. Bob was full of apologies, and later John Logan commented that I was sure it was cool, being able to finish the prayer after all the fireworks. I think the explosion might well have been a comment from God, not about the content of my prayer, but about my resistance to public prayer. Rod's death and circumstances. Rod had always been a hard-partying, fun-loving kind of guy. When Donita, mother of his children, divorced him, he made the rounds of the clubs and found Charlene, who pretty well matched up with his wild lifestyle. They married, gambled, drank, and fought their way through several years of wedded bliss. Near the end, the fighting and threats of divorce again were a great source of stress. His children were also a tremendous source of stress. They were always seeking money, and Rod could see that the money he gave them was only facilitating their bad lifestyles. His daughter's rejection, his son's imprisonment, his wife's bipolar actions and threats of divorce, they literally drove him crazy and to a heart attack while fighting his demons. I, his senior by 10 years, was left to sort out many problems as the executor of his estate and trustee for his children. We were also partners in ownership of the building that Southland occupies and half-owners in the business. I negotiated a settlement with Charlene that bought out her interests in his estate. If he had divorced her and paid her off, he might be alive today. I bought his half of the business, partly from life insurance that we had bought for each of us just for that purpose. Those $1 million is the basis for most of the trust money for the girls. When the girls rejected him, he had responded by leaving all his investment assets to Shiloh. He never changed his will, however, so the other assets went into trust between all the kids. At this time, I am still trustee and in half ownership of the building with the trust. In many ways, I have to deal with his family and the same problems that brought about his death. I have been determined to not let them affect my mental and physical health. Rod was a good person raised in a good family who lost his way. He let himself go the easy way, make the easy decision, associate with people for the wrong reasons. It can happen to anyone. You can only try to do what is right, not what just feels good. Ethics, morals, religion all help. Southland days. So how do you write about or sum up the experiences of the time you spend about your business? Again, I will resort to those impressions that run fleetingly through my brain as I think back on all those years. Using the old mechanical accounting machine to keep records of accounts receivable. Hand-writing invoices for in-store and delivery purchases. Riding in the delivery truck with Charles Duke to deliver to our rich customers. Ross Perot, H.L. Hunt, and others. Unloading the many truckloads of Olin fertilizer, an agricultural fertilizer that we sold for lawn and garden use. Unloading the boxcar filled with bales of peat moss that had come straight from Canada filled with ice and snow. Rod and I shot rats in the old warehouse because they were eating holes in the Jim Dandy dog food bags. Trips to New Orleans, Houston, San Antonio, Austin to set up new warehouses and distribution points. Interviewing the new Aggies, fresh from college, looking for jobs. Sievert Nielsen and Lee Swafford. Borrowing $1 million from the bank, because your inventory growth was exceeding your cash flow. Writing computer code to satisfy the vendors who always wanted more reporting. Worrying about which vendor was going to slip it to us next. 70-year milestone, the 70-year mark. Well, I haven't written anything much in the last couple of years. I have reached the 70-year-old milestone in relatively good health. I am still riding motorcycles, still working at the office, playing golf, mowing grass, maintaining 3 houses, etc. Merlene and I purchased a lake house on Cedar Creek Lake this last year and are enjoying having friends and family there on many weekends. We are now house poor with Stark House in New Mexico, Cedar Hill House, and the Nautilus on Cedar Creek. Might as well enjoy it because Obama and his administration are destroying the dollar and limiting our freedoms in a multitude of ways. Things are never stable in our business. Southland Supply is just recovering from food recalls and the recession has slowed our growth. Suddenly, however, we have several opportunities. Problem is, the opportunities require huge cash commitments. My friends are all retired and living on Social Security and savings, and I am faced with investing everything I have and everything I can borrow in risky growth. Grow or die. I am purchasing the other half of the Cascade warehouse from the Rod Stark Trust, not because I want to, but to extricate myself from his children and financial entanglements. The warehouse is too small for our future needs and I will probably have to sell it soon at a loss, but you have to do what you have to do. Mom and Dad are still living at their home in Forney, with help during the day. Mom is in a wheelchair because her hip won't stay in place, and Dad is still driving. I try to appreciate having them and visit on the weekends. I know that when they are gone, I will feel that I should have spent more time with them. I still have those feelings about Brandy, and I guess everyone that loses a loved one feels that way. Looking forward, myself, Steve Dozier, Randy Cochran, Don Chick, Brian Atwood, and John Lee are about to do another men's motorcycle trip. It will be John's first time with the old guys, but he will have Donnie to help support the youth movement. We will trailer the bikes to Starkhouse in New Mexico, moto on Jeep roads to Chama, more Jeep roads to Silverton, and over the passes to Telluride and Lake City, then on to Crested Butte and Salida, with a party at the Dog Bar in Cachara, and finally back to Starkhouse after 6 days on the bikes. Donnie tells me we need to do this another 3 or 4 years so Austin can join us for the trip. Good luck to that at 74 years old.